Hello, and welcome to Leadership as a Philosophy, Not a Checklist, bonus content. And this one is called The System is Broken. Now, we go back and look all the way to the very first episode of this project, which was called The Problem. We're now going to take the problem and we're going to apply it to a thought process that I've done as part of the research for this project. As I said, I made this plan all the way back in May about what I wanted to do. And what's been very interesting about it is a lot of the videos and books that I wanted to look at were things that I had read or struck a chord with me before. But now that I'm looking at it in light of this philosophy, process, whatever, suddenly new things come to light. So what I encourage you to do, which is something that I do myself, is I assume that when I'm reading a book that I'm going to be proven wrong. Not that I'm right, let me see. It's let me see what I can get out of this, because somebody took a lot of time to get something written, put some stuff down on paper, clear their thoughts. It means that it's something significant. It struck a chord with a publisher. So all of that is worth thinking about. This video is also going to be a little bit different because I'm just going to talk about the system. And the system in this point is the training system that we have for leaders. And like I said, if you want to understand what I'm talking about in greater detail, go watch the playlist Leadership is a Philosophy, Not a Checklist, on this channel. The other thing that happened is I want to thank an anonymous person who taught me a really important lesson during this whole thing, which is that just because I'm super passionate about something and I believe that there can be a fix and that there's a way to go about trying to do this, and we need to come together and talk about these problems, a lot of other people aren't thinking that way. So just because, I get some little bit of response, I get super energized thinking, oh my goodness, this person's on my wavelength, and then find out that that's not the case. So it's been interesting. It's been a challenge. But at the same time, I think this is worth doing. So we're going to go on to the PowerPoint and basically talk through the process and see what you guys think. Like I said, this is bonus. This is mostly my thinking and comparing stuff, so not something that you can pick up and read, although there will be a couple of references to stuff you can read. So hope you enjoy. Thanks. Alrighty, and welcome to the PowerPoint portion of today's content. So as I said, what I'm going to do is walk through sort of the education system, if you want to use that phrase, and then I'm going to use the leadership philosophy hypothesis to go through that. So first item is, just go to the next page. So here's our two young, bright people that are going off to do wonderful things. So these are all the hoops that they have to jump through. First of all, they're bright high school students and they want to be successful. So they're sharp, so they're bright, they're smart. People go, ooh, they're going places, and they say, we want to be successful. Well, everybody translates for them, well, we want you to go make lots of money. So it could be their parents, could be their career counselors, you don't know. But they get put into the path, right? So companies pay lots of money to executives, so you need to go become an executive. Okay, well, so the kid says that, guidance counselor and the parents say, go be an executive. Okay, well, in order to do that, then you get put on the track. So the track is to get yourself into one of the best business schools so that then when you graduate, you'll get immediately hired and get a big, high-paying job. Well, there's nothing wrong with this, but is it really what you want to do? So here they go, right? So the track is now they got to have their advanced placement classes, every single one that's complete, that's even possible. They have to have 10 to 12 extracurricular activities. They have to have a 4-point amazing GPA. They can't really have any flaws or mistakes in their educational record, and they're groomed for a high-end school. Well, so there's a couple of things that we're starting about right now. First of all, let's talk about the character development, right? If we're going to talk about the 4 characteristics. So how much empathy, even though these people are doing 10 to 12 different things, how much empathy do they have? I don't know. How is this, if we are going to go around and say that most leaders, people that are natural leaders, a preponderance of them are mildly introverted? Well, to go be the president of this, the leader of the sports team, create some club to do X, member of such and such, you have to be a huge extrovert. So, as we've talked about, going all the way back to the hypothesis, when we talk about the philosophy, the solution and how to identify that sort of stuff, if we're going to accept, and I think it's true, that most leaders are introverted, not super introverted, but introverted, how is having them running around trying to show that they're the best and the bright shining star of every conceivable thing, how is that selecting for leadership? I don't know, right? I don't think it is. And so that's a struggle as well. But they're going to go through and jump through all the hoops, and they end up with a bunch of different stress, because if you're doing 10 to 12 extracurricular activities, how much attention are you really paying to each one of them? You know, you're spending an hour doing this and an hour doing that, and you've got all your homework and you've got this. And so basically all the student's doing is running around like a crazy person. And they're doing it because the system says to do it. It's a problem. So then they go through the selection process. The recruiters from these elite universities show up and say, ooh, do you understand how amazing it is that you're the elite of the cream of the crop? And so therefore you're a special 100% unique, fabulous, going to be a leader person. So you need to come to our school. So they end up picking one of these elite universities. But it happens in business schools all over the place. So pretty soon they walk in and the opening thing for their class, you're the elite, you're the top 0 point something percent of such and so, and this is the most selective we've ever been, and you're just amazing, and you're going to be the future leaders of America, and blah, 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 and all this stuff. Okay, so they have been jumping through a bunch of hoops, and they go out to college and end up being told that they're unbelievably amazing people. Okay, and look, I'm not knocking it, and this isn't everybody. There are people that, even though they're going through this system, still have some humility because they were raised right or have good character. They have integrity. They have empathy. And they're paying attention to that sort of stuff. So then they're told they're the most impressive class in a generation and yap, 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 yap. I bet every single one of those classes is the exact same thing. I don't know. So what do they study? They study business processes because they're in management schools. They study business processes, systems efficiency, productivity, how to analyze a system and look at this and what the process is. All right. So they're heavily recruited and offered these big salaries by their companies because, well, we have Harvard educated. We have such and so have been educated. We have graduates of such and so business school. So we've got this and they're amazing, bright, shining, bleeding edge people, whatever. And they're going to be leaders. Okay, cool. Well, what happens? Now, I want to make sure that I'm really clear on one thing, right? This happens in the military too. The military academies are the exact same thing. They're considered the elite of the universities, of the university system for the military. And so it's the same process. You jump through a bunch of hoops, you do all this sort of stuff, you go off to the thing, and you're told all these sort of stuff. Okay. So my question is, this is the person that we've developed. So when have they been evaluated for their ability to handle power? You're going to take these people that have gone through this system and done processes, and all they've done is systems and processes, and all they've done is take care of themselves because they want power. Well, have we even explained power to them? When have they ever been evaluated for that capability? What happens if we give somebody who's never had power before a bunch of power? They're going to be irresponsible with it, right? When has their judgment ever been tested? When have we ever put them in an ethical dilemma and had them actually have to think through it? We don't know, right? We have no clue. All we know is that they can jump through hoops and jump through systems and go through processes and all this sort of stuff. All right. When have they ever been exposed to the nature of humanity? If you're studying business processes and systems and productivity and all this sort of stuff, when have you sat down and read, hey, here's times where people in charge have catastrophically failed because they didn't pay attention to human nature? When have we figured out what it is to actually talk to somebody? When have we had any sort of empathy? When have they ever been put in a situation where they understand what somebody is going through? I don't know. They've been told for 4 years, 8 years, that they're the most amazing, the most brilliant, the most whatever. These people are masters of systems. They know nothing about people. Real humanity. When have we given them that? Right? When have they been evaluated for integrity, humility, empathy, vigilance? Now, these students may have some of that. They may have empathy. They may have humility. But are you really training somebody, teaching somebody the importance of being humble when you're in charge, when all you've done for 8 years is tell them how they're the cream of the crop and they're the best of the extra best? We haven't, right? So when has anybody explained to them what leadership really means? Right? Do they really understand what it's like to have to sit there? I was talking to somebody else about this, and I've mentioned it in other videos. You're a leader. You're in charge of a situation. You are in a tight spot. Oh, brother, where art thou? Damn, we're in a tight spot. You're in a really bad situation. Things aren't great. And you are given a terrible situation, a 5% less terrible, a terrible solution, a 5% less terrible solution, and then a 5% less terrible solution than that. Pick. Those are your 3 options. They're all terrible. People might have to lose their jobs. This might get cut. That might happen. Have you ever been in a situation where you can go through that? Have you ever even thought about it? Do you want that responsibility? Nobody's explained that to anybody. They don't know. You got to have people doing this at the beginning. Right? And then has anybody ever asked them if they want that responsibility? Do you really want the power over somebody's life? And I'm not being hyperbolic. If you're in charge, if you're in an organization and you've got some sort of leadership over people, your actions have an impact on their livelihood. You create a crappy environment for them and then they get ill health or they quit or they leave. You decide that in your infinite wisdom you're going to rip somebody's head off for making a mistake. And what do? They get mad and they go home and they yell at their family. Now their family's a mess. Do you really want that responsibility? And then are you going to be able to handle that? Because are you paying attention to yourself? Where in this process is any of this? And then how much free thinking are they really capable of? All we've said is jump through these hoops, do these things, check these boxes, go to this university. Oh, and then here's what's even worse. Where did I put that down? Actually, I didn't put it in here. I'm sorry. So they go to these high-end colleges. Well, guess what happens? Because they've got the keys to the castle now. They can turn in late work and not get in trouble. They can go in and argue with the professor to try to get a different grade. They can do substandard or not great work and still get a passing grade. Depending on how much influence or whatever that their family has, they get passed through the system. Right? And so take that person who's never really had to be accountable for their actions or what their impact is, and then put them in charge of people. What happens? Right? You don't know. So this is what we've produced. Now, the book Excellent Sheep by William Deresiewicz, I know I did another review of him, talks about this in a scathing fashion. It is a blistering critique of this system. And so go get the book and read it, right? You can also look at the article he did called Excellent Sheep. But he outlays all of that. Now, this is the problem. This is the system they've been through. this is what they need if we're going to put them in charge of people. They don't have it. We've never even done anything to identify if that person's even suitable to be a leader. All we know is they can jump through hoops and run systems like crazy. So then how much free thinking can you actually do? Right? How many times can you sit there and go, golly, I got to solve this problem. The system's not giving me an answer. So let's see. Here's the thing. So now here's our students, and then here's the big bosses, right? So what happens? So they're put in charge, and they never assume that they're wrong. They're hired. Oh, where's the bullet? There's the bullet I put on here. They're hired for their credentials. Oh, I graduated from fill in the blank elite business school. Okay, well, you've been telling them for 8 years that they're amazing, and then you put them in charge. Well, they're amazing. How can anybody tell them what to do? How can they be incorrect about something? Oh, there it is. Hired because they're credentials by credentialed people. So people from the system hire them because they're from the system. Then when confronted with an issue, I don't know what to do. Well, where's my checklist? Title of this thing, Leadership's a Philosophy, Not a Checklist. Where's my checklist? Oh, this problem doesn't fall within the checklist, so it's an invalid problem. Or I'm not going to do anything about it. Or I'm going to push the can down the road, right? So they're risk averse because all they know is, here's the things I'm supposed to do. They get in some company, what's the first thing they ask? Well, how do I get to be the CEO? Dude, you need to learn how to do your job first, right? So they're risk averse, and then they assume because they've been told that that they're so amazing that if there's a mistake, it's the employee's fault. Are you kidding me? It's not them. And so things start going downhill. They blame this. We got to fix a new system. Let's implement a new process. Let's do all this sort of stuff. They've never been taught to sit down and go, let me really analyze this problem. Here's how complex this problem is with all of these variables and all of these things that involve human nature. And what's the impact of my actions? What if I do nothing and doing nothing is better than doing something? We've never told them that. All we've told them is jump through the hoop, jump, 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 jump. I said it in other videos. Let's try the system harder. All right. So then they end up being mistrusted. Why? Because they don't have any integrity, right? They blame other people. They've never had to be on time or produce great efforts. And so next thing you know, they're making a bunch of decisions. And like I said, I'm being generalist. You end up with people that are successful despite their training, right? So they got a lack of integrity. They're not used to being held accountable for stuff. So something bad happens. Well, it clearly is not my fault. It must be somebody else's fault. So pretty soon everybody goes, man, don't go talk to Big Boss because Big Boss is going to throw you down the river. They make decisions out of self-interest instead of the interest of the employees. How many times have you seen that happen? Somebody makes a decision because they don't want to get yelled at instead of saying, this is the best, I don't care the consequences. Well, that's what we just produced. That's what the system just produced. Is it their fault? No. No. The expectations are completely wrong. The leadership, if we want leaders, we have to find out what makes a leader, identify them, and develop that ability, and then evaluate whether or not they can handle that. And that should be the requirement. But instead, it's, I need all of these systems and processes and this and that and the other thing. Here you go. Now, what I find hilarious is, and this is just a little personal anecdote, about 2 weeks ago, I found a job where they were looking for a leadership program developer. And I was very excited because I thought, oh my goodness, that sounds like my kind of job. So it said they need somebody who's free thinking, analytic, to help identify and groom leadership, to fill their leadership pipeline, to evaluate the abilities of leaders to influence and impact their teams, to put the right person. So it almost sounded like human resources, but better, to come up with a training and development program to improve leadership capability, blah, blah. And I read all that and it was amazing. Oh my goodness, that's fantastic. Then they said the requirements for the job was a master's degree in something I had never heard of. They had to be 2 or 3 different management system experts, so systems again, and they had to have a year of management experience. Well, that's the system, right? So all they know is credentials. They want a leader. They think that this thing is going to do that. No, that person is not. There's no indication whatsoever that that person's a leader. It's also like, I haven't included it because I'm sort of embarrassed, but I watched a video where there was a guy that was in charge of a business school. He was the dean of the business school, PhD in management or whatever, the dean. And he's talking to people and says, well, I've never actually had to be in charge of people, but I'm going to teach this leadership class. I don't have to say anything else. All right, so it gets worse. So now we've got this problem, right? So next thing you know, the employees hate working for this person, or this person starts getting resentful and neurotic and doesn't like the team. So the big bosses say, we have a problem. Okay, well, the big bosses came from the system, so they decide there's a problem. So they call in a consulting firm to fix their processes with people from the same system. So then you end up with solutions that are processes and system oriented, never addressing what's going on with the employees, never talking about actual leadership, never seeing if the person's toxic. We got to get rid of 20 people. Well, what if you need to just get rid of the boss and those 20 people become infinitely more productive? But they don't know how to do that because they're all these systems people coming for the system thing. Systems, process. But the heck are we talking about people? So lack of leadership, not rulership, is the root of the problem. I saw a great line. I can't remember where it was because I've been reading so much. But it said, we're training rulers, we're not training leaders. Right? So the lack of leadership is the root of the problem. If you had all of these companies, if they had leaders at every level like we've talked about, they would solve the problem. There wouldn't be any problems. But they're not given that power. The first thing that happens is somebody comes in and says, well, there's no systems here. Anyway, I get distracted. All right, so what can be done? You got to have leadership at every level. We talked about it during the hierarchy. If you have leader at the top somewhere, leader at the next level, somebody who's a leadership type, not just a leader title, not a ruler, well, then those people are all talking all the time. And then they can evaluate these sort of things. And so you can find, this person, no, don't put them in charge of people because they're not going to be good at it. Well, but they've got all these credentials. Okay, well, cool. Well, let's go put them over in charge of fixing this system. We got a process problem. But then you got to go watch them still because we still haven't evaluated them around people. You come in and say, I've got something that's 2% more efficient, but it's going to require 30% more work for the employees. I would not implement that unless the employees were doing nothing. But if the employees are fully engaged and you go up there and say, we're going to get 2% more productivity, but you're going to have to work this extra, you got to do all this. Nope, you go find a better way, boss man. Well, not boss man. And then there needs to be an evaluation. So I like the idea. I've talked about it a little bit. This is a solution, right? If you want to do that sort of thing, we need to identify all of the things we talked about in the solution. We got to find out if the leadership personality traits are correct. We have to identify leadership talent in people, and then we have to develop that talent. You can't go teach the talent, right? So what you do is you get somebody, you're trying to bring somebody out of school, you put them in an internship with your company for 3 summers. Between the freshman and junior year, you have them doing the most menial job for the summer, working with the entry-level employees. Why? You got to see if they're humble. You got to see if they learn what it's like to do that, because they'll get to see what the impacts of dumb decisions from the bosses are, right? And then the next summer you bring them in, you put them at another thing. And at that point, they get evaluated by a leader, not manager. Bring them back the next summer. You have them go through something, but you put them at a different place, a different hired thing, working with a leader. And then that leader quizzes them. Hey, we're going to go do this. What do you think? What are your thoughts? What would you do? and see. And if they have good instincts, well, then that's something that you can develop. Or you find out that their decisions are always, well, do this and this and this and fire that person. Nope, they're done. So now they're not going to be in leadership in the company. You go off from a job, say, hey, maybe you can work somewhere else. You're not going to be in charge of people. And then the third summer, they get a little bit higher up and do a little bit more than, so they're getting evaluated by the big boss, who's a leader and can sit there and say, yeah, that person will work out in our company. I think they're going to be fine. That's the way that you evaluate them. Or you bring somebody on a 6-month trial. You're going to be here for 6 months. We're going to do this, but then you have to follow through and you have to go give them feedback the entire time. Maybe they don't like that. I don't know. Anyway, and so that's the thing, right? Just like we talked about with the example from the Taj Hotel, we got to identify what characteristics make, the talent. We got to identify the philosophy. We got to identify the characteristics, if you want to say that. And then we got to develop them. How do you develop them? You give them a bunch of books to read, and then you have long discussions about the books. One of my frustrations when I was in the Army was that I thought that all of the officers, because I'd read a couple of books where this happened, that whoever the higher officer was would once a month get everybody together and say, here's a leadership problem I want to work through, I want to talk about. Here's an example of something that happened in history. Let's talk about it. No wrong answers. Because what happens, right? If you have human beings, which are chaotic, and then you have daily operations, which are chaotic, how are you going to solve two forms of chaos working together or rubbing up against each other? You don't know, right? So if you talk through examples, then it starts broadening your wisdom. You start sharing wisdom from 100 years ago, 200, 300, 1,000 years ago. So it's like a similar example, a similar situation happened. So at least I've thought about this situation, but mine is different in 7 different ways. The example from Leadership by Rudy Giuliani. Great book. All that stuff he did when he was a mayor, great. I'm never going to be a mayor, but I'm going to understand some of those examples that happen and be able to apply those to my situation. But it makes you think, here's what somebody else did. Maybe that'll work or maybe that won't. Or at least, I know the direction that person went, but you still have to do your own thing. Anyway, that's the system. That's the reason that it's messed up. And how are we going to fix it? You got all these companies that keep hiring external people. You need to stop doing that. You need to start figuring out how to identify the leadership in your organizations. You've got it. Like that company that was looking for the development manager. They probably have a person that would be amazing at it in their company because it was a big company. I was excited. I was going to apply. I couldn't even apply because I don't have 3 of the credentials. I mean, like I said, this is not about the job. I'm not saying anything about the company. They're a big company, and I'm sure that they have somebody that would be ideal, but nobody knows because they don't have anybody that's being vigilant. We don't have leaders that are evaluating their workforce. I mean, that's the problem. Anyway, as I said, probably a little bit too much babbling, but I just wanted to get that out. It started off, this was going to be a discussion about a certain paper and a certain book, and then I just didn't like the direction it went, so I deleted it and redid it. And I think this is a better example, or this is a better discussion. So think about it. And to understand this, go back and look at the Leadership as a Philosophy playlist if you haven't watched it. I know it's long. I mean, it's long-ish, but it's worth doing. So hopefully some stuff to think about. And I'm really looking forward to the videos that are coming up the next couple of weeks because it's rolling into December. So I decided to do something a little more fun or a little unique. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. And I will see you next time. Thank you very much.